Mom handed me their new will with a smirk that could cut glass. "You won't get a single cent," she said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. I looked down at the legal document, my name conspicuously absent from every page, while my younger brother Jake's name appeared repeatedly alongside dollar signs that made my head spin. I smiled back at her, feeling something shift inside me like tectonic plates realigning. "Then don't expect a single cent from me." The words hung in the air of our family's sprawling Denver estate, the same house where I'd spent 28 years bending over backward to earn their approval. Where I'd sacrificed my dreams, my relationships, and nearly my sanity trying to be the perfect daughter. My mother, Catherine Morrison, wife of real estate mogul Robert Morrison, had always made it clear that Jake was the golden child. But this was a new level of cruelty, even for her. "Elena, don't be dramatic," she said, waving her manicured hand dismissively. "You're a strong, independent woman. You don't need our money." "You're absolutely right," I said, folding the will carefully and handing it back to her. "I don't need your money. But funny thing is, you're going to need mine." Her perfectly Botoxed forehead tried to furrow. "What's that supposed to mean?" I thought about all the times I'd covered their mortgage payments when Dad's investments went south. The credit card bills I'd quietly paid when their spending spiraled out of control. The business loans I'd co-signed, the family vacations I'd funded, the country club dues that came out of my teacher's salary because they temporarily couldn't afford them. For 8 years, I'd been their financial safety net while they lived like millionaires and treated me like hired help. "Mom," I said, my voice steady as steel, "who do you think has been paying your Nordstrom bills for the past 3 years?" The color drained from her face faster than water down a drain. "Who co-signed the loan for Dad's Porsche Cayenne? Who's been covering the mortgage on this house every time his sure-thing investments turned into disasters?" Jake, lounging on the leather couch with his phone, finally looked up. At 25, he'd never held a job longer than 6 months, never paid his own rent, never even pumped his own gas. The will promised him everything: the house, the cars, the jewelry, the investment accounts that I'd been secretly funding. "Elena, surely you're not serious about," Mom started. "About what?" "About stopping the monthly transfers that keep this family afloat? About canceling the credit cards I've been paying off? About telling the bank that I won't be responsible for Dad's next brilliant business venture?" The silence that followed was deafening. Outside, a Colorado blue jay was singing in the aspen trees, oblivious to the family drama unfolding in the Morrison mansion. I stood up, smoothing my dress, the same navy blue one I'd worn to every family dinner for the past year because I couldn't afford new clothes after supporting them. "I need to think about this," I said, walking toward the door. "Don't worry though. You won't be hearing from me for a while. I'm sure Jake can handle things now that he's inheriting everything." The front door closed behind me with a satisfying click, but I had no idea that this was just the beginning. Driving away from the Morrison estate in my 10-year-old Honda Civic, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: freedom. But it was quickly replaced by a sick realization of just how deep I was in their financial quicksand. I pulled into the parking lot of Brookfield Elementary, where I'd been teaching 3rd grade for the past 6 years. Even though it was Saturday, I needed the quiet familiarity of my classroom to think clearly. The hallways smelled like chalk and hope, a stark contrast to the suffocating perfume of manipulation I'd just escaped. Sitting at my small teacher's desk, I opened my laptop and pulled up my banking apps. The numbers staring back at me were worse than I'd thought. My savings account, $847. My checking account, barely enough to cover next month's rent on my modest apartment in Aurora. But the real shock was seeing the automatic transfers laid out in black and white. Every month for the past 8 years, $2,400 to my parents' mortgage company, $800 to their credit card, $500 to their country club, $300 for their car insurance. Plus random transfers whenever Dad called with another emergency, usually ranging from $500 to $5,000. I was sending them over $4,000 every month. On a teacher's salary of $48,000 a year. No wonder I lived on ramen noodles and shopped at thrift stores while they dined at the Capitol Grill and bought designer handbags. My phone buzzed. A text from Jake: "Elena, Mom's crying. You need to apologize and come back. This is ridiculous." I stared at the message, remembering all the times Jake had borrowed money from me, money that was never paid back. The time I'd given him $8,000 for community college tuition, only to find out later he'd bought a gaming setup and never enrolled. The countless dinners I'd paid for, gifts I'd bought him, rent I'd covered when he got evicted. Another text: Dad says you're being selfish. Family takes care of family. The irony was so thick I could taste it. I started calculating. If I stopped all the transfers immediately, I'd have an extra $4,000 per month. In a year, that would be $48,000, literally doubling my income. In 5 years, I could have a down payment for my own house instead of paying theirs. But first, I needed to understand exactly what I'd gotten myself into. I spent the next 3 hours going through bank statements, loan documents, and credit card bills. The picture that emerged made me nauseated. I wasn't just supplementing their lifestyle, I was completely funding it. Dad's business hadn't been profitable in 4 years. Their investment portfolio was a disaster. Without my monthly contributions, they'd lose the house within 6 months. My phone rang. Mom's contact photo, a glamorous shot of her at last year's charity gala, the one I'd helped pay for, filled the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call. Dad this time. Voicemail. Jake called next. By the time I left school that evening, I had 14 missed calls and 23 text messages ranging from pleading to furious. But here's what they didn't know: I'd spent my afternoon doing more than just calculating our financial entanglement. I'd been making phone calls of my own. Monday morning brought a knock on my classroom door during lunch break. Detective Amanda Brooks from the Denver Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit stood in the hallway, looking professional in her navy blazer. Ms. Morrison? I'm Detective Brooks. You called about potential financial fraud. We sat in the empty teacher's lounge while I laid out everything I'd discovered over the weekend. It turned out my Sunday afternoon research had uncovered something far worse than financial manipulation. Detective, I've been co-signing loans and making payments for years, but I never actually saw the full documentation. When I requested copies from the banks, I found signatures on documents I never signed. I slid a folder across the table. These are loan applications for my father's business ventures. Someone forged my signature on at least 12 different documents, totaling over $200,000 in personal guarantees. Detective Brooks examined the papers, her expression growing serious. These signatures don't match your actual signature at all. There's more. I showed her credit card statements. I've been paying off cards that were opened in my name without my knowledge. When I called the companies, they had applications with forged signatures dating back 5 years. What I discovered was that my parents hadn't just been manipulating me emotionally, they'd been committing identity theft. Using my good credit and steady employment, they'd secured loans, opened accounts, and made purchases that I was legally responsible for, but had never agreed to. The total amount of fraudulent debt in your name appears to be around $180,000, Detective Brooks said, reviewing my documentation. This is definitely criminal. My hands shook as I processed the number. No wonder they'd been so confident cutting me out of the will. They'd already stolen my financial future. There's something else, I said, pulling out my phone. I recorded our conversation on Saturday. Colorado was a one-party consent state, so the recording was legal. Listen to this part. I played back my mother's voice. Elena, you know we had to be creative with some of the paperwork. You were so busy with work, we just handled things for you. Detective Brooks raised an eyebrow. That's essentially a confession to fraud. It gets worse. My brother Jake was in on it too. I showed her text messages from Sunday night where Jake had inadvertently admitted to helping forge documents. He texted me, "Dad couldn't write your signature as good as mine, so I helped sometimes. It's not a big deal." The detective leaned back in her chair. Ms. Morrison, you have enough evidence here for multiple felony charges against both your parents and potentially your brother. My stomach churned. Despite everything, these were still my family members. But the teacher in me, the part that had always believed in consequences for actions, knew what had to be done. What are my options? You can press charges for identity theft, fraud, and forgery. Given the amount involved, we're looking at serious jail time. Or... She paused. You could use this as leverage to get your money back and extract yourself from the situation. I thought about my students, about the field trips we couldn't afford, about my own dreams of maybe someday having children and providing for them. I need to think about this, I said. But deep down, I already knew what I was going to do. I called a family meeting for Wednesday evening at their house. When I walked into the living room, the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Dad sat rigid in his leather recliner, Mom perched nervously on the edge of the couch, and Jake sprawled across the love seat like he owned the world. Elena, thank goodness you came to your senses, Mom started, but I held up my hand. I'm here to discuss terms, I said, setting my briefcase on the coffee table with deliberate precision. But first, I want to share some interesting discoveries I made. I pulled out a stack of documents. Dad, do you remember co-signing a $35,000 loan for your landscaping business venture in 2019? His face went pale. Elena, I can explain. No need. Because according to the bank, I co-signed it. Except I was in Seattle that week at a teaching conference. Funny how my signature managed to appear on documents when I was 1,200 miles away. Jake shifted uncomfortably. Mom's hands started trembling. And Mom, that American Express card you used to buy your new Lexus? The one with the $18,000 balance? Turns out it's in my name. Along with 6 other credit cards I never applied for. Elena, sweetie, we were going to tell you, Mom began. Tell me what? That you've committed identity theft? That you forged my signature on documents totaling over $200,000? That you've destroyed my credit while living like royalty? The silence was deafening. Outside, I could hear the neighbor's dog barking, but inside the Morrison mansion, you could hear a pin drop. Dad finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. How much do you know? Everything, Dad. I know about the business loans that failed, the investment accounts you emptied, the second mortgage you took on this house using my name as collateral. I know you haven't made a legitimate profit in 4 years and that every penny of your lifestyle comes from me. I opened my briefcase and pulled out a recording device. I also have this conversation recorded, along with Jake's helpful text messages where he admits to helping forge my signature. Jake sat up straight for the first time in the conversation. Elena, you can't be serious. Oh, I'm deadly serious. I spent yesterday with Detective Amanda Brooks from the Financial Crimes Unit. She was very interested in our family's creative approach to document management. Mom started crying, real tears this time, not the manipulative kind I'd grown up with. Elena, please. We're family. We can work this out. You're right, Mom. We can work this out. I have a proposal. I pulled out a legal document I'd spent all morning preparing with the help of a lawyer friend. Here are my terms. First, you transfer ownership of this house to me immediately to cover the fraudulent second mortgage you took in my name. Second, you liquidate every asset you have to pay back the money you've stolen. Third, you sign confessions to the fraud, which I'll hold as insurance against future manipulation. Dad's face turned red. You can't do this to your own family. I'm not doing anything, Dad. I'm simply presenting you with an alternative to federal prison. The room fell silent again, but this time, I was the one in control. 3 weeks later, I stood in the kitchen of what was now legally my house, watching my parents pack their belongings into cardboard boxes from U-Haul. The irony wasn't lost on me. After 8 years of funding their lavish lifestyle, they were moving into a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Thornton, while I inherited the home they'd nearly lost to foreclosure. Elena, this is cruel, Mom said, wrapping her crystal collection in newspaper. We raised you better than this. I looked up from the legal documents spread across the granite countertop, the same countertops I'd helped pay for 3 years ago when they upgraded the kitchen. You raised me to be responsible, honest, and to face consequences for my actions. I'm doing exactly what you taught me. The settlement had been swift once they realized I had enough evidence to send them to prison for a decade. They'd liquidated their jewelry, Dad's Porsche, Mom's designer handbag collection, and their investment accounts to pay back $127,000 of the stolen money. The house transfer covered most of the rest. Jake appeared in the doorway, carrying a box of his gaming equipment. At 25, he was about to experience his first taste of real responsibility. This is insane, Elena. You're destroying our family, he said. I'm not destroying anything, Jake. I'm simply no longer enabling the destruction you've been causing for years. I gestured to a stack of job applications on the counter. I printed these out for you. There are several entry-level positions available. You might want to start applying. I don't know how to do any of this stuff, he whined. Then you'll learn. The same way everyone else does. Dad walked through carrying the last of his boxes, looking like he'd aged 5 years in 3 weeks. Elena, I hope you're happy. You've turned your back on the people who love you most. Something inside me snapped. Love? You call identity theft love? You call forgery love? You call stealing my future love? I stood up, facing the 3 people who had shaped my life for 28 years. Let me tell you what love actually looks like. Love is working 2 jobs to help pay for your son's college tuition that he never used for college. Love is eating ramen noodles so you can pay your parents' mortgage. Love is sacrificing your own dreams so your family can live theirs. My voice grew stronger with each word. But you know what love isn't? Love isn't using someone's kindness against them. Love isn't forging signatures. Love isn't stealing someone's identity and financial future while cutting them out of your will. Mom's tears started again, but this time I felt nothing. No guilt, no urge to comfort her, no desire to fix whatever was broken. You have until Friday to be completely moved out, I said, returning to my paperwork. The locks will be changed on Saturday. After they left, the house felt different. Lighter somehow. I walked through the rooms that had once felt like a prison of obligation and saw something new, possibility. For the first time in 8 years, my bank account was growing instead of shrinking. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't responsible for anyone's mistakes but my own. But the biggest change wasn't financial. It was the woman I saw in the mirror. 6 months later, I barely recognized my own life. Standing in the renovated home office that used to be Jake's gaming room, I looked out at the Denver skyline and marveled at how much had changed. The house was finally mine, not just legally but emotionally. I'd repainted every room, replaced their gaudy furniture with pieces I actually loved, and transformed the space into something that reflected who I was, not who they wanted me to be. My phone buzzed with a text from my friend and fellow teacher, Rachel. How's the tutoring business going? I smiled, looking at the appointment calendar on my desk. Morrison Academic Solutions had started as a simple idea: use my teaching skills to help struggling students while building my financial independence. 6 months later, I had 12 regular clients and a waiting list. The extra income had allowed me to do something I'd never imagined possible. I just put a down payment on a small vacation rental property in Breckenridge. After years of funding other people's dreams, I was finally building my own. My laptop chimed with an email notification. The sender's name made my stomach clench. Robert Morrison, Dad. Elena, I hope you'll read this. We've been living in the apartment for 6 months now, and your mother isn't doing well. She misses you terribly and regrets how things ended. Jake has found a job at a warehouse and is learning to be responsible, just like you wanted. I've started working again too, nothing fancy, but honest work. We're trying to rebuild our lives without relying on anyone else. Would you be willing to meet for coffee? Just to talk? Your loving father. I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me, the old Elena, wanted to respond immediately, to forgive and forget, to let them back into my life because family was family. But then I walked to my bedroom and looked at the framed photo on my nightstand. It was from last month's Teacher Appreciation Dinner, where I'd been honored as Teacher of the Year for my innovative reading program. In the photo, I was smiling, really smiling for the first time in years. Next to it was another photo, me signing the deed to the Breckenridge property, my real estate agent shaking my hand, both of us grinning at what I'd accomplished. These weren't the achievements of someone who needed fixing or rescuing. These were the accomplishments of someone who had fixed herself. I closed the laptop without responding to Dad's email. Instead, I opened my journal, a new habit I developed, and wrote, Month 6, still no regrets. The hardest part wasn't cutting them off financially. It was realizing that the version of myself I'd been with them wasn't really me at all. It was someone smaller, someone who believed she had to earn love through sacrifice and suffering. That evening, I had dinner with Rachel and her husband Mark at a restaurant I actually chose, not one selected to impress anyone or accommodate someone else's dietary restrictions, but a cozy Italian place where the pasta was perfect and the conversation was real. You look different, Rachel said, studying my face across the table. Lighter somehow. I smiled, twirling linguine around my fork. I feel different. I feel like myself. 1 year after the day Mom handed me the will, I sat in my home office preparing for the biggest meeting of my professional life. Morrison Academic Solutions had grown beyond my wildest dreams, and the Colorado Department of Education wanted to discuss implementing my reading program statewide. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was about to potentially impact thousands of children's lives using the skills and passion I'd nearly lost while supporting people who never valued my contributions. My doorbell rang at exactly 2 p.m. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I approached the front door cautiously. Through the peephole, I saw a familiar figure that made my heart skip a beat, but not in the way it used to. Jake stood on my front porch, holding what appeared to be a small wrapped gift. He looked different, thinner, more tired, but somehow more real than I'd ever seen him. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. "Elena," he said, his voice uncertain. "I know you probably don't want to see me, but I had to come." "What do you want, Jake?" He held out the wrapped package. "It's your birthday next week. I know you probably don't think I remember, but I do. I remember a lot of things now." I took the gift but didn't open it. "Jake, if this is about money." "It's not," he said quickly. "I have a job now. 2 jobs, actually. Warehouse work during the day and I clean offices at night. It's hard, but I'm making it work." I studied my brother's face, looking for signs of manipulation, but found something I'd never seen before: genuine remorse. "I wanted to pay you back," he continued. "I know it'll take me years, maybe decades, but I've opened a savings account. Every month, I'm putting money aside for you. It's not much yet, only $400, but it's a start." The gift felt light in my hands. "What is this?" "Open it." Inside was a small photo in a simple frame. It was a picture of us as kids, probably 8 and 5 years old, building a snow fort in the backyard of this very house. We were both laughing, covered in snow, completely happy. "I found it in my stuff when we moved," Jake said. "I remembered that day. You spent the whole afternoon helping me build that fort, even though you wanted to go ice skating with your friends. When Mom called us in for hot chocolate, you gave me the marshmallows from your cup because you knew I liked them better." My throat tightened, but I didn't speak. "I don't remember when I stopped being grateful for things like that," he continued. "But working these jobs, paying my own rent, buying my own food, it's made me realize how much you sacrificed for us. How much you gave up." He stepped back from the door. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I finally understand what you tried to teach us. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to become someone worthy of having a sister like you." I watched him walk away, and for the first time in a year, I felt something shift in my chest. Maybe some stories don't end with cutting people off forever. Maybe some stories end with learning that love isn't about what you can take from someone, it's about what you choose to give, and more importantly, what you choose to accept in return. But that's a story for another day. Today, I had a meeting that could change thousands of young lives. And I was ready.